Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area. Back in April of 2020, when we decided to create this ongoing series on COVID-19's impact, first on nonprofits and then on small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area, we, like you, had no idea how long the pandemic would go on and what the health and economic impact would be on our community. As we enter our second year of the global COVID-19 pandemic, with record numbers of both cases and deaths, our schools, businesses, and governments are still struggling to deal with the health, economic, mental, and societal impacts of the latest Omicron variant. This all adds to the ongoing uncertainty of our ever-changing indoor and outdoor, vaccinated and unvaccinated protocols, and the politics of the pandemic that will drive how we all come back together as a unified or fractured community. We will continue to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community, along with the founders and staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability until we can all get to the other side of the pandemic. Along the way, we will also share with you all the amazing solutions that our nonprofits, small businesses, foundations, and government leaders are working on to help us all get to the other side of the pandemic and come together to rebuild our communities with more economic, social, and environmental equality.
So thank you to San Mateo County and Governor Newsom for taking advantage of FEMA funds for Project Home Key to get people permanently housed. We were so excited in the shelter that we were eligible for permanent housing. However, if it wasn't for the Miracle Money program, I would have been disqualified for income senior housing that I occupy now. This program does change lives and make things better for its participants.
Welcome to our annual holiday show and fundraiser. As we bring this year and our special series on COVID-19's impact on nonprofits to a close, we wanted to go back to episode 1 in the series when we introduced you to Miracle Messages, and in episode 75 when we introduced you to Miracle Messages' Miracle Money program. In this, our 102nd episode of the special COVID-19 series, we're featuring the voices of the CEO of Miracle Messages, Kevin Adler, and Miracle Messages General Manager of Los Angeles, Jenni Taylor, along with Miracle Money program participant Elizabeth Softky. I'd like to turn to each of our guests today and have you provide a little bit of background on yourselves. So let's start with you, Kevin.
Sure. Well, nice to be with you, George, and thanks for having us back. It's always a pleasure. So my name's Kevin Adler. I'm the founder and CEO of Miracle Messages. Started Miracle Messages back in December of 2014. I had an uncle who was experiencing homelessness for about 30 years. He lived on and off the streets of Santa Cruz. So after he passed away, it made me start thinking, gosh, everyone I'm walking by, that's someone's uncle or aunt, someone's son or daughter, someone's brother or sister. And I wanted to know what the backstories were. So Miracle Messages really began with my own personal family connection to this issue. And I began to realize how so many of our unhoused neighbors experience what we call relational poverty as a form of poverty that often gets overlooked. And my personal background, I was born and raised in Livermore in the East Bay, in the Bay Area, and have worked in tech for a little while, but most of my career has been spent as a social entrepreneur, first in the education tech space and now in the work around homelessness. And then I do a decent amount of public speaking and have my second book coming out in about a year, which is on the topic of homelessness. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Kevin. And Jenni, why don't you share with the audience a little bit of your background as well?
Thanks, George. And Kevin, we're so excited about your book coming out. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenni Taylor. I came to this work through a kind of meandering path, but I started as an international teacher for about 10 years and then started working in educational nonprofit work. And March 2020 happened with COVID. I was sent home from the international waters and moved to Los Angeles. And I was looking for something to throw myself into. As soon as you move to Los Angeles, when you haven't lived there before, when you see people going through homelessness, it is staggering. And it's one one of those moments where you have to decide then and there, am I going to get involved or am I going to shut off this part of my heart and try to find something else to throw myself into? So thankfully I picked number one and I was able to find Miracle Messages, and it's been a joy to be with them ever since.
Thank you. And then Elizabeth, please share with the audience your background.
Hi, yes, thank you, George. My introduction to Miracle Messages came through the pandemic. In September 2019, I had a surprise diagnosis of advanced colon cancer. At the time of the diagnosis, I was a teacher in the Redwood City School District, plus I was running my own arts program, Jump Into Writing. That all came to an immediate stop. I got excellent care through Stanford Medicine and did have to undergo chemo, which I don't recommend to anybody, but made a full recovery. So I thought I was all done with cancer, but my oncologist decided in the end that I should go on this extreme chemotherapy. I was not allowed to return to work because my students could have killed me, literally. So I did recover, got good care, but I was unable to work and couldn't pay my rent. And I was thrown out of my rental home of 14 years. Fortunately, 2 hours before I thought I was going to wind up on the streets, I got a call that there was a medical bed available at a shelter and was able to stay off the street. Living in a congregant shelter is a special form of hell. There's just lots of violence. So a congregate shelter, it's open space. There's no borders, there's no doors, no nothing. And women are especially vulnerable in these situations. And I was very angry at God to be in that same situation. But I never lost my faith. And he had a plan for me when I stopped being so angry and calming down. He told me that what he wanted me to do, that he had gifted me to tell people about the realities of homelessness and what drives it. And about a month later, I got connected to my miracle friend, who is now like my dearest friend, Joan, and became part of representing this amazing organization that is doing so much to help people and inform people about the reality of being unhoused.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to you, Kevin, and have you provide some background on why you and the team at Miracle Messages created the Miracle Money program.
Absolutely. Well, great, again, have Jenny here with me and a beloved member of our team. Elizabeth's story is incredibly inspiring. And you hear Elizabeth speak about her experience, about her story. And no one should go through homelessness. Absolutely. But you hear Elizabeth, you're like, you should never go through homelessness. Like, this is ridiculous. And it turns out that most of the people experiencing homelessness have stories like Elizabeth. We tend to think of homelessness in very narrow, stereotypical form of what maybe we see on the streets. That's a form of homelessness. And there's many people who have severe substance abuse issues, drugs, mental health issues. And it's very visible, but also a minority of people who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity in the United States. So what we found is as we built the Miracle Friends program, and as folks like Elizabeth and Joan got to know each other, we started hearing from our volunteers, Joan and others saying, gosh, my friend Elizabeth, my friend Ray are amazing. They're so talented. They're so capable. I can be in a relationship with them, but even if you want me to be in an equal footing relationship, if they don't know where they're going to get $50 for fill up their tank of gas so they can try to get to the work site, or if they don't know where they're going to get a couple $100 for childcare, or a few $100 for a blender, or $500, $1,000 to contribute towards housing, we can't be an equal footing. There's a fundamental disparity when one person is thinking about their basic human needs, food, water, shelter, clothing, housing, and then another person is potentially quite a bit better off. And so just listening to our volunteers and hearing how they wanted to show up even more for our unhoused friends, we said, well, instead of having a burden or an expectation on any of you contributing more than just your time and your energy, why don't we try to raise some money to see if we can give to some of our participants in Miracle Friends? So initially set a goal, I think, of about $10,000 or maybe it was $15,000 initially, and we ended up hitting $50,000 in just a few days over Facebook, social media fundraising. So we were able to invite all of our volunteers who are active in our Miracle Friends phone buddy program all around the world, 1 hour a week, phone calls, text messages, kind of like a big brothers, big sisters for the homeless. We invited all those volunteers at the time to nominate their unhoused friend if they thought that they'd be a good candidate for $500 a month for 6 months as a basic income for the homeless. From dozens and dozens of nominations, we had the hard task of being able to eventually select 14 individuals. And of those 14 individuals who are either currently or formerly homeless, 9 were homeless at the time that they received the first $500 check. And by the end of the 6-month period or right thereafter, we had 2/3 of those individuals that were able to secure stable housing as a result of $3,000 being paid out over 6 months. So long story, slightly short, from that, we just realized that, gosh, our unhoused neighbors spent the money better than we could have spent it for them. And we saw overwhelmingly people use money on housing, food security, childcare. A couple people got service dogs for their PTSD. Individuals bought a blender that they needed to eat for their dentures with food. And they spent the money better than we could have spent it for them. So from that, George, we said, gosh, this is just too logical, too basic common sense to not expand it. And I could share more about that if you'd like later in the program, but we'll be making a big announcement about a major expansion of Miracle Money. But Elizabeth was the first recipient of Miracle Money back in December 2020. I hope I'm not outing you, Elizabeth. Miracle Money made the first payment transfer to Elizabeth. And the first thing she did with the money was she made a donation to Miracle Messages. And I said, Elizabeth, you didn't need to do this. Why did you do that? That wasn't necessary. That wasn't expected. And right away, she said, I didn't do this for you. I did this for myself so I could once again feel the dignity of being able to support the causes that I believe in. Said, hey, you spent the money better than I could have spent it for you. So that's what Miracle Money is about. It really worked so well together with our Phone Buddy program.
Thank you, Kevin. Great story. And Elizabeth, turning to you, could you share with the audience what your experience has been in working with the Miracle Money program and how it's helped you?
Thank you, George. Well, pragmatically, through the program, it helped me to do what I needed to do and access what I needed to get to return, let's say, back out into regular society. I was living in a hotel in Pacifica at the time. Thank you, Governor Newsom, because it answered a lot of prayers for a lot of people to be put into hotels where I had a door, a lock, key, and a privacy. There were still some problems with the tourists coming in and out, but it was overwhelmingly better. And with the Miracle Money program, it bought me time to reflect and think about what do I need and how can I meet that need. It may sound trivial, but like for clothing, by the time I was in the hotel, I didn't have any money. I had food and had shelter, but I didn't have money to buy clothes. And that's when I discovered that you can literally have clothes falling off your back because they're so old and you can't wash them anymore. So I was able to buy clothing. I was able to buy shoes. And yes, make donations. I've been a volunteer ever since I was in 4th grade. It's in my DNA, just giving back and wanting to help. So I was able to give to Miracle Money to pay back what I never could. Also other organizations that I supported as well.
Your participation, Elizabeth, in the program, has it helped you find housing or stabilize housing? Are you still in the hotel room? Because I know part of the room key program is starting to sunset as well. So where are you today with regards to housing?
So I am housed. I live near water again. So out on Bear Island in Redwood City, California. The Miracle Money program was truly a miracle. After my full recovery, I'm 4 years in remission from colon cancer. And then after that, I was able to enter a vocational program through San Mateo County, work and get paid. I was able to save money for the first time in my life, really, not let it just go in and out. So saving money from employment and also saving up the Miracle Money program disbursements that I was getting. So thank you to San Mateo County and Governor Newsom for taking advantage of FEMA funds for Project Home Key to get people permanently housed. unhoused. We were so excited in the shelter that we were eligible for permanent housing. However, if it wasn't for the Miracle Money program, I would have been disqualified for low-income senior housing that I occupy now. This program does change lives and make things better for its participants. And thank you again, Kevin. So I'm very happily housed out on Bear Island, working and being able to give back through being a partner in sharing like my experience and hope that I found through Miracle Money and Miracle Messages. I now have a position as a lived experience advocate, telling the truth about what drives people to being homeless, not just in our local communities, but around the world. Millions and millions of people are experiencing being unhoused, even if they still, just for many factors, as I'm sure you know about, they still cannot access housing. And so part of partnering with Kevin and Miracle Messages to tell people the truth about who gets unhoused and why, and that even people who have a lot of money, they are still not going to have enough to retain safe, permanent housing in the United States.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your story. Really appreciate that. And it's so wonderful that Miracle Money has been able to help stabilize your housing and that you've found some permanent housing. I'm going to turn to you, Jenny, and have you kind of walk the audience through how Miracle Messages and Miracle Money program reaches out to the community. How does that program work to reach folks like Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy, in LA County, they just did the homelessness count, and we have over 70,000 people experiencing homelessness just in LA County. And I don't have the same numbers for the Bay Area, but we assume they're higher than anyone has ever imagined. But knowing that this program exists and knowing that this idea of cash flow going to people experiencing homelessness is a relatively new idea, and how do you get that out while staying very true to the core of who Miracle Messages is? And the core of who we are is really that social support. We're more than just the cash, right? We're trying to build those relationships and those bridges that we need of relationship. And so knowing that part of the Miracle Money program is related to our Miracle Friends program, that you have a friend who's just there for you, that while your life is going through these changes, while you're receiving this money, you can still jump on the phone and have someone to talk to, because there's a lot of emotions around this. It's exciting. It's a little scary, sometimes not sure what direction to go in. And more than that, just to have someone on the phone to call when so much of that social support has been lost through the process of experiencing homelessness. So when it comes to outreach, we're so excited to partner with all of these different people across the Bay Area, through Oakland, and now through Los Angeles County. But these partnerships where they're trying to provide shelter, they're trying to provide meals, they're trying to provide some clothing, there's showers, these partners who are doing wonderful work. But then we get to come along and partner with them. We've never even really needed much of an office in LA, but we go out and partner, and we show up to these sites where people are getting other services that are very much needed. But the magic question is, do you just need someone to talk to? And just that question is enough to open up for the program. Let's just start there. And still coming to that core of who Miracle Messages is, let's just start with the social support. Do you just need someone to talk to? We all need someone to talk to. So getting people interested that way and signing them up. And then as they go through that process with us, we learn a little bit more about their needs, what's going on. And right now, the way that Miracle Money is working is a bit more complicated, but we are trying to do this through a study with our partners at University of Southern California. Through this study, we're hoping to really collect data to swing kind of the psychology around it. When I was growing up, we were told, don't give money to anyone experiencing homelessness, give out granola bars, give out McDonald's coupons. There was a very strict idea around this idea of cash. So I think as we're breaking those stereotypes, having the study behind us with the data, and the data mixed with the stories, and then the data plus the stories plus the relationships is what's really going to change things. So this program can grow, so the funding can grow, so this becomes common. So this changes that psychology around the trust and the mistrust that I think has been built up around cash for people going through homelessness, and really breaking those stereotypes. So we start with the social support, with the outreach, and as we make those connections, it grows from there. And we're really excited to have our study partners as well.
You're listening to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant from the James Irvine Foundation, dedicated to a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. More at irvine.org. This is George Coster, your host, and if you're just joining us, this is our annual holiday show and fundraiser featuring the voices of the founder of Miracle Messages, Kevin Adler, and the general manager of Miracle Messages Los Angeles operations, Jenni Taylor, along with Miracle Money program participant and community activist, Elizabeth Softky. Let's rejoin our conversation about the Miracle Money program's cash transfers to our unhoused community members, which supports both their housing and life pathways.
Thank you. So it starts, if you will, with the kind of Miracle Messages model of reaching out to folks who are experiencing homelessness and trying to create that relationship. And then those folks, like Elizabeth, for example, are offered to participate in the Miracle Money program. Is that how it works?
Correct. There's a random selection process that's going on at the moment in connection with the study, and Kevin can speak more to that. But when someone is randomly selected, they're notified that they will be receiving this money. And now it's up for a full year, which is really exciting about the cash transfers. But on one of these calls, I was able to witness when we were able to tell one of our participants who I had signed up. I met this man at an outreach on the street. We became friends over the jewelry that he was making. And I got to meet his mom, who also lives with him out on the street. And we were able to make this call with him. And one of his responses that he said was, wow, miracles don't fall out of the sky. They come through the phone. And I just thought that was such a beautiful moment. So once they're notified, those cash payments start going through and we get to see what happens.
That's great. Kevin, I'm going to come back to you. And Miracle Messages has been at this for a while. Miracle Money, is it going into the second year operation?
I'll give you the quick timeline on all of them. So Miracle Messages as a reunion service began December 2014. Miracle Friends really got going in its kind of current form in about May of 2020 with the shelter-in-place hotels. So in the first couple months of the pandemic, and we partnered with San Francisco City and County to launch it, and it's grown since then. And then the first cash payment for Miracle Money was December 2020, and the bulk of the payments during that 6-month proof of concept was in early 2021. So Miracle Friends, I guess, would be, what is that, about 2.5 years old, Miracle Money about 2 years old, and the reunion service about 8 years old now.
Kevin, from your perspective, what do you feel has been the biggest impact Miracle Money is having on our unhoused community members?
Well, what we've seen so far is quite a few people get housed as a result of Miracle Money. We've created this identity of homelessness in our society called the homeless. We don't look at ourselves as the housed people. And it's a problematic identity because there's lots of variations of why someone's on the streets, how long they've been on the streets, whether they're on the streets or at a shelter, whether it's a medical issue or a job loss or a combination of multiple factors. So I think the two things we probably have done best with Miracle Money is, one, helping a number of unhoused individuals either get off the street into housing or at least be able to invest in themselves and their future and start thinking about what comes next. One thing Elizabeth mentioned, I think it may be the first time I've heard Elizabeth say it in these words, was just the importance of having time and space to think, just process things and kind of collect yourself. That to me, all the ways that our unhoused friends and formerly unhoused friends now use the money, that's the number one benefit. And I think the second is around the narrative and the stigmas around who the homeless are, big quotes, how they would use money. We've demonstrated through Miracle Money, which is, I believe, the first basic income pilot for people experiencing homelessness in the United States, and certainly the first one to focus on the importance of social support. We've demonstrated that when you invest in people, trust people, and are in relationship with people, good things happen. And I think that's counter to the narrative that we often hear around homelessness, where everything has to be top down. We know what's better for you. There's lots of hurdles to leap over to get services. And we say, no, actually, we'll give you the money and better than what we do. So I think that changing the narrative around homelessness, as well as the uses of the funds, are probably the main outcomes that I'm excited about.
And Elizabeth, from your perspective, what do you feel has been the biggest impact of Miracle Money on unhoused community members?
The very first thing that pops into my mind as you ask that question is just a return of, for me and for many others, demonstration of being respected, to regain your sense of self-respect. Just how we approach being unhoused in the United States in particular. It's so freaking cruel. And there's so many, I'm going to say, lies about how people become unhoused and why. I learned when I was in the shelter, there were some benefits. God had me on this path to talk about this and let people know. And one thing I learned when I was in the shelter is that most people who are unhoused, they work. So in the shelter that I was in, it was literally on an island in the very back of San Francisco International Airport. And who put us there on that island in the back of the airport? Rich people. We don't talk about the different pressures that force people to become unhoused. And there's so many hurdles, unseen hurdles to the outside world that keep people from gaining housing. And one of those hurdles is being placed in shelters in situations so far away from services. In order to get my CalFresh, it used to be called food stamps, benefits, I had to take a 3-hour bus ride to get there. Now, at our shelter in San Mateo County, they do distribute a bus day passes. So we are able to get around, but it takes so long to get places, especially if you don't have a car. So most people who are in the shelter situation, they have cars. They use their cars to get to work, to jobs that they've been working at often for years, but just that rents or being able to buy housing had just become completely out of reach. I am not an early riser. In our shelter, lights went on like at a lot of shelters at 5 a.m., which to me is a special form of hell. But you see people getting up, you see them getting out, getting dressed, putting on their makeup and getting out to their jobs that most of them like doing, but they're not paid enough to be able to access housing. I remember my bunkmate above me, and she was in a conversation with another woman, and they were saving money for housing. They actually had several thousands of dollars in their bank accounts, but it still was not enough money to access housing in San Francisco Bay Area. So that was an eye opener for sure.
Thank you. Really wonderful context. I wanted to turn to everyone to actually share kind of a favorite story, if you will, of participating in Miracle Messages. Jenni, I want to start with you on that question.
Sure. My favorite part isn't being a manager, but is actually being a miracle friend. I matched with a wonderful man that I had actually met in person on outreach. He is 69, turning 70 this year, and he had been experiencing homelessness for 17 years when I met him. And I'm really excited because my favorite moment was just about 3 days ago when we had our weekly call, and he just moved into a new apartment, which is just such an incredible moment to experience that as a volunteer, to experience just that moment of joy with him, to know I've met him in person, to have walked some of this journey with him, and then to see this massive change in his life has been really exciting. So that's a favorite moment for me.
Thank you, Jenni. And Elizabeth, favorite story or moment of your participation in Miracle Money, the Miracle Messages program, or even as you've transitioned out, a story or a moment that means something to you?
Besides being able to have funds to support other organizations that are very near and dear to me, just being able to go out there and go shopping. Yes, I'm a girl and I like shopping. And I had so much embarrassment and shame when I didn't have money to buy clothes and they were just like literally falling off of me. So be able to participate in something normal, even though I went through a hotel program, had more secure housing, I still had like a sense, of shame and not belonging, that there was barriers between me and the world that I used to live in. So being able to get connected, being able to get access to Ubers and Lyfts to get around faster, to get to work faster, that really changed me in many ways to get back to the Elizabeth that I remembered from before all this. And as far as the Miracle Friends program, Joan and I are beyond like good friends. We're really like sisters, and that we are also great teammates. We work together. One example, the first time I talked to her, we just connected. I know it was a God thing. We both are just similar family backgrounds. I grew up in a middle-class family. I graduated from UCLA. I had a successful career as a teacher, and she comes from a teacher family. So we get each other's teacher jokes. So we make each other laugh about that. But I'll never forget that after our first phone conversation, about a minute in, that was the first time that I felt how alone I had been, because there's really no time to think and process. Even if you're in a safer place, there's always something happening. But I had that time, that quiet, and being able to talk to someone who I could connect to, feel my own loneliness for the first time, because interacting with people in shelters is extremely dangerous. Interacting with people in the hotels was still dangerous, but here was a safe person I could confide in and putting me back on that path to reconnecting with the world.
Thank you. And Kevin, favorite story or moment?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't even begin to start. I mean, it is a joy and a highlight for me just to hear Elizabeth share the impact this program has made in her life. To have a friend like Elizabeth, I'm not as bosom buddy with Elizabeth as Joan is, but that's understandable. But Elizabeth, I consider her a friend. I guess it was almost a year ago, Elizabeth, at Thanksgiving time, do that little potluck thing for your German friend at your house that we went to.
Yes, and it wasn't, oh, how funny, you remember my German friend. No, actually, it was celebrating my birthday plus celebrating my being housed.
But it was like, you were so humble about it because you're like, well, it's my birthday and it's being housed and it's like their going away party or something. I think they were traveling or moving out of the area or something. So long after my involvement with Miracle Messages has ceased, little memories and relationships and stories like that will continue. I can't look at my neighbors experiencing homelessness the same way anymore. And I'm very fortunate to not have lived experience, right? Like it's something that we're starting to learn to value the importance of lived experience, because it's almost inconceivable for folks on the other side of that threshold to know what it's like. 8 years in, 1,000+ people I've talked to, I still cannot imagine. And I'm still jotting down notes when I hear someone like Elizabeth talk about the experience. So for me, on the whole, just the relationships I built with the folks we've served, some of whom have become dear friends like Elizabeth, staff members and team members like Jenni, and the impact we've been able to have and kind of just use their skill sets for greater good. But I'll give you a quick one beyond just all that. A powerful one that happened recently was a guy named Johnny was the second individual to reconnect with his loved ones back in March 2015 after Jeffrey. And last year, he reconnected. He had brothers and sisters fly in from across the country within 3 weeks of him recording a message, reunite in person, hadn't seen each other in 30 years. Last year, I'm looking through the call logs of active participants in Miracle Friends. Turns out Johnny is one of our unhoused friends in Miracle Friends. So I reach out and get in touch with him and his friend, and he didn't even know that it was the same program. He thought Miracle Messages, Miracle Friends. He didn't put the two together. And we spent a couple hours. He's now housed, I think it's kind of a SRO hotel room. And we had a nice chat. He said, it's like you saved my life, doubly, because the reunion service, he was at a time when he was doing drugs. He was really hard to reach. He said he was on a path that wasn't going to lead to anything good. And it gave him a sense of hope and purpose. But then family doesn't swoop in and solve every underlying trauma or problem for most people. And he still had to face the challenges he was facing. He was having health issues. And then he said, at a time of severe loneliness and isolation where he had thought about ending his own life, that's when he got matched with his phone buddy, as well as getting connected to a therapist. So I don't want to understate the importance of the counseling and therapy as part of this process. And he said that the friend of his, Linda, has saved his life. He has a friend, someone to confide in. So for me, the fact that it came full circle from the second person that reconnected, and then now he's a friend of mine. And I'm writing a book on homelessness. It'll be out next year, just submitting the manuscript. And Johnny's story is the one that I've kind of concluded the book with. And Elizabeth's story is one of the anchor stories that begins one of the sections of the book. So for me, these stories come full circle. They've affected me very deeply, and I'm forever changed for the better as a result.
Thank you, Kevin. And staying with you, Kevin, how can folks in the community get engaged in supporting the Miracle Money program?
So we've recently announced, I'll share here, really one of the first times to be sharing this, We are doing a major expansion of Miracle Money. We've received over $1 million grant from Google.org, as well as a comparably sized gift from a few individuals and foundations, leading us to have over a $2 million basic income plus social support pilot for people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco, Oakland, and Los Angeles. And we'll be, through the course of the next year and a half, giving out more than $1 million to people experiencing homelessness in direct cash transfers. So we are going to, as part of that, need a lot of volunteers. We're talking 300, 350 volunteers to be in our Phone Buddy program. It's 1 hour a week. You can commit to text messages, phone calls, wherever you are in the world. We can get you a private phone number through our partners at Dialpad or using Google Voice. You don't have to use your own device phone number if you don't want to. There's training, there's mentoring, there's community. And hey, take it from Jenni. She has her day job with Miracle Messages, but then she's doing this because she's such a wonderful human being, and it's her favorite part of the whole thing, is being in this Phone Buddy program. So we need more phone buddies, and please, if you're interested, learning more, signing up, go to miraclemessages.org, go to our Get Involved form. I'd be remiss if I don't mention, as the CEO of the organization, the money that we receive from our donors, we try to give out directly to unhoused individuals. We also invest in our Phone Buddy program, our reunion services, and other work to address relational poverty. So most of our funding comes from individual donations. And if folks feel compelled to make a donation, you can go to miraclemessages.org and make a donation there. So I'd say going to our event, joining our Phone Buddy program, and then considering making a gift, whatever is a meaningful amount to you and your family, would be wonderful. So those are the best ways to get involved.
As I recall, I think Miracle Messages has brought together, is it 800 families now?
Soon enough. We're at over 700 now, and we'll be eventually at 800. And I think we have over 250 phone buddies that have been active in our program. So cumulatively, we've served well over 1,000 people experiencing homelessness throughout the country.
And then how many folks have actually, like Elizabeth, participated in Miracle Money program over the last 2 years?
So the initial pilot was 14 individuals. Elizabeth was one of those 14. And then we have our expansion that we're enrolling, recruiting for in LA. Jenni and her colleague Joan are hard at work in LA. We have a team in San Francisco doing that in SF and Oakland. That will extend Miracle Money to another 110 individuals. So cumulatively, we'll be at about 125 within the next year or so.
That's great. All right, so I'm going to go to our final question. Basically, since we're still in COVID, I just wanted to ask each person if they could share from their perspective what are some of the positive things that have come out of the pandemic to support our unhoused community members, whether it's through the Miracle Messages program, Miracle Money, etc. Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you.
Well, George, as I think about it, there have been positive things that have come out. First thing that comes to my mind is that we are now starting to get accurate information about the unhoused, which are our brothers and sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, they're people, how that actually happens. It's not the tropes, those are lazy or bad, or even drug addiction. Drug addiction comes at the very end of your resources and abandonment by friends and community. So there's more accurate information about what drives people to become unhoused. Who are the unhoused? It breaks my heart as a mother and a teacher that almost the majority of people who are unhoused are families with children sleeping in cars, sleeping in garages, and that these families, these moms and dads, aunts and uncles, they work. But again, they can't get enough together to secure safe and affordable housing. So as more and more of the remainder of the middle class in the United States experience homelessness, they have an advantage. They have good educations, college educations. They know how to work, how to discern and work systems. And a lot of people are going through being unhoused. They're not hiding in shame anymore. More and more people are coming out and talking about their experience and what they see and what they believe needs to happen with getting one who wants housing, that they can access housing. So I think that's one major move where the American success story has been proven false again, and so-called ordinary people, ordinary citizens are starting to take action on this and being willing to share their stories. And I want to acknowledge an important part of my recovery and getting back out into the world. And that has been being able to work with Kevin on different projects and being trusted. It has restored my self-esteem immensely to be a useful person sharing my gifts. Some highlights of some of our collaborations that he initiated was me as a lived experienced advocate for the U.S. Census Bureau. So I was able to help vet different projects to get people on the margins of our society involved with the census. And that includes people who are unhoused as well. They are citizens, they pay taxes, they contribute to our society, but the Census Bureau hadn't been looking at them as a population to target. And so I was able to get that on their plate. And just being able to do things together with Kevin when we went to Baltimore for an international youth gathering of Jewish youth from around the world, and being able to talk and share our experiences with Miracle Messages. Also, while Kevin was working on his book, he commissioned me to go to Atlanta, Georgia in his place for the GI conference there. Hundreds of people attended. I learned a lot and I ate lots of wonderful food. So maybe he'll go next year instead of me.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Jenni.
Oh man, so hard to follow that. That was beautiful, Elizabeth. What good has come out of this in relation with COVID-19? I think it's such a great question. Just as she said, I think there's more understanding. I think there's more information. I think there's a lot more activism going on that is really beautiful to see. But one of the things I see a lot is the compassion that has come out when I'm asking people to volunteer with us, which I'm really passionate about. We really bring up the idea that people experiencing homelessness are very isolated. There's depression going on. There's loneliness going on. And I think everyone has always been able to connect with those ideas. But I think especially after lockdown and the COVID-19 response and how isolated housed people felt and how much we reached out to our loved ones during that time. How many phone calls we made in one day during lockdown just to feel connected, just to feel loved, just to feel like we weren't losing our minds. And so taking those feelings and now saying, you know what, some of our unhoused neighbors haven't had a conversation like that in years. I think that level of compassion is really starting to turn that tide where we're seeing that we have more in common than we did before. And so I see that even though it's a difficult thing, I think it's become a really beautiful thing to come out of this.
Thank you, Jenni. And Kevin?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief because I think Jenni and Elizabeth really captured a lot of what I would share as well. Early on in the pandemic, a fellow kind of homeless nonprofit leader told me something of what he heard one of the unhoused clients say to him that stuck with me. Said, "You don't need to teach me about social distancing. That's my life already." And to Jenni's point, I don't think most of us have any sense of what that level of isolation, loneliness, relational poverty is like. But we glimpsed it and we tasted it in a way that was very uncomfortable and very painful and hurtful for a lot of our mental health over the pandemic. But we got a glimpse of what many of our unhoused neighbors face every single day to a much greater severity and extent than anything that is imaginable. So I think that change in perspective to lower the barriers of us versus them and realize that this experience of relationships, social support, we all need to feel like we belong. And then I'd say the other piece for us is we found that most cities and counties and larger homeless service providers were pretty resistant prior to the pandemic, even again now, to innovation and to deep, meaningful collaboration. But as a result of the pandemic, there was this period of openness and possibility that led us to be able to partner with the city of San Francisco and create a phone buddy program and then create a basic income pilot on top of that and grow those. And now, as Jenni's doing in LA, find all these terrific partners down in LA that kind of share our vision for a more humane and human-centered approach to homeless services. So I think the collaboration that's come of it, and just, I don't think Miracle Friends and Miracle Money would have emerged in the way they did and with the success they've had if it wasn't for the increased openness that the pandemic, I would say, necessitated on behalf of service providers and cities and counties. So yeah, I think the pandemic was incredibly painful and continues to be for many people. Our unhoused neighbors were disproportionately affected, especially those in congregate shelters, and then those who are still living and dying on the streets from the ravages of severe addiction. So it's not over yet. So it's not something to speak about in the past tense, but there have been a lot of light and possibilities that have emerged that I hope we can build on. And at the end of the day, when the government says we don't have enough housing, and then you hear of a project that houses thousands and thousands of people very quickly in something like Project Room Key or Project Home Key, which Elizabeth referred to, that shows what we're capable of when we look at homelessness as the human rights crisis that it is, as if it was a natural disaster that displaced people. We have to have that same conviction and coming together for something like homelessness. Even if it's a man-made, no one deserves to be homeless, and very few did anything wrong to contribute to their situation. It's really systemic and breakdowns in our common humanity. But again, during the pandemic, we've seen some light that we can build on and to hopefully continue long after the pandemic is a thing of the past.
Thank you. Really wonderful answers. Thank you, Kevin, Jenni, and Elizabeth, for sharing your wonderful work of Miracle Messages and how the Miracle Money program is helping our unhoused community members. We'll make sure that listeners have your contact information, website, and social media. And finally, for the Miracle Money holiday program, I'm matching donations up to $2,500. So please go to miraclemessages.org/donate. And I want to wish Kevin, Jenni, and Elizabeth a wonderful end of the year holiday season. Please stay safe and healthy out there as we all work our way through the latest stage of COVID-19. And thanks very much for participating in today's show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, George.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voices of the founder of Miracle Messages, Kevin Adler, and the General Manager of Miracle Messages Los Angeles Operations, Jenni Taylor, along with Miracle Money Program participant and community activist, Elizabeth Softky. To donate to the Holiday Miracle Money Fund to provide funds directly to our unhoused community members, please go to miraclemessages.org/donate. And remember, I'm matching up to $2,500 so you can double your donation. You can listen back to Episode 1 in our special series to hear about the background of Miracle Messages with Kevin and to find out more about the success of the Miracle Money program and its impact on our unhoused community members. Please listen back to Episode 75 of this series, where we feature the voices of Ray, Jen, and Kevin. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. Today's episode was made possible by the audio wizard and our associate producer, Eric Estrada, and the graphics magic of Casey Nance from Citron Studios, along with the wonderful crew at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. Voices of the Community is supported by a grant from the James Irvine Foundation, dedicated to a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. More at irvine.org. Voices of the Community is a member of Intersection for the Arts, which allows us to offer you a tax deduction for your contributions. Please go to georgecoster.com and click on the donate link to make a donation to help us provide future shows just like this one. While you're on our website, you can enjoy our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities. And you can sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows, as well as shows and events from the organizations that are included in our episodes. Take us along on your next COVID walk by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.